Zach Bush, it's really an honor to have you. I met you, I think it was last year. We were all at a dinner together, and it was a room of spectacular individuals, but there was something about the way you spoke, something about the way you carried yourself that, and everybody seemed to be gravitating towards what you were talking about. So, what are you doing here? How did you start? What brings you to this discussion?
I think it's been a very long journey of deconstruction of a long education. And so I educated for a very long time through academia. I became a medical doctor and then went on to subspecialties in internal medicine and then subsequently endocrinology and metabolism. During that study of and practice clinically of hormone medicine and the like, excuse me, I've been talking for a couple days.
Yeah.
The been So you got the hormone medicine going on one side. I was doing basic science research in cancer. Subsequent to that, cancer research was kind of realizing that increasingly I couldn't find a single case of cancer that had been caused by a lack of chemotherapy.
Right.
And so it's the sudden realization of perhaps the entire industry that I was trained into for 17 years was tracking down a symptom management course and not at all a root cause solution to anything. And as somebody who goes into their life thinking they're on an altruistic mission of medical doctoring and healing and all of this, to find out 17 years down the road that you've pretty much been brainwashed into a toolbox that is entirely made of pharmaceutical patch jobs, and you're told this is what you got, this is what you have to work with. And meanwhile, you have the complete collapse of human health happening in parallel with that career.
Right.
And so to watch human health, every 5 years decaying across the country at a rate that was completely outstripping any progress we were making in medical science. We tend to get caught up in, well, we know more than we've ever known. We have more tools than we've ever had. We've got more scientific knowledge than we've ever had. And yet that's nowhere near keeping up with the pace of disease progress in the epidemics that we're seeing. And so finally in 2010, I just kind of hit a roadblock of life and decided I was going to have to take a complete left turn from my previous course, and had kids and they were headed towards college and had debt and a mortgage and all this stuff. I had almost $200,000 of school debt, all this stuff. You're
Right.
like, I can't change direction, but I have to change direction. And so, anyway, took that left turn and started deconstructing everything and got quickly down to the reality that nutrition must be at the core of everything. The way in which we interact with the nature around us ultimately is the most and foremost the food we put in our mouths. And in that journey, discovered that we can map almost every disease epidemic we have right now to some fundamental changes that have had happened in the food industry.
Um, so cancer got you in. Cancer is cancer. I mean, I feel like I see these St. Jude's, interview. I mean, these ads, and they're like, we're beating cancer. We're on, we're beating cancer. We're on cancer. Every time I see someone raising money for cancer, I'm riding my bike around the country for cancer, or will you put money into this jar for cancer? And I just think I feel like I'm paying into a system that's growing cancer. I mean, I really feel like that's the case. And though I know people are trying to do what's right, what is happening with cancer? I mean,
The fundamental flaw that we have is that we've defined cancer incorrectly. And it turns out we could use the word cancer and just say disease, because cancer is ultimately just the end stage of an inflammatory loss of communication at the cell level, and you ultimately will get a cell that's so disconnected from its previous environment that it doesn't know it's part of a human body. It knows that it's the only thing left of life, and the only option for it as a highly damaged cell is to start to replicate. And so it's trying to preserve the last element of life that it's aware of because it's so isolated. That is the end stage of diabetes, obesity, autism, attention deficit disorder, Alzheimer's, dementia. You name all of these diseases that are going epidemic at the same time in the last 20 years, they're all tracking back to that pathophysiology of cancer, which is a disconnect, collapse of self-identity at the cell level. And you end up with this lonely, damaged cellular phenotype, which can manifest in any single organ system. And so the extraordinary, situation we're in is we are marching billions of dollars of, consumers who are just donating money. But you look at the healthcare industry at large, you're $5.5 trillion by 2020 here. We've got, somewhere around $500 billion a year being pumped right into chemotherapy, just that single therapeutic modality. All of that is flawed because we've been told that it's a genetic disease. We've been told that the diseases that we see around us are genetic.
Right.
You can't help it. It just happened to you. You've got autism, you've got cancer, you've got Alzheimer's, you got this, you got that. And by believing that there's a genetic underpinning, and even in those situations where we, as physicians and scientists, we know there's no genetic underpinning, we tend to present it to the patient that way. We tend to be like, I don't know if we just feel bad for the patient. We don't want them to feel like this is their fault. Breast cancer, for example, less than 2 or 3% of breast cancer is really from a genetic predisposition. The 96, 97, 98% is from the environment. And in that moment that we kind of try to say, oh, it's not your fault, we completely tear away from the individual any opportunity to correct the underlying problem. And so we say, this is a genetic thing, there's nothing you can do about it. The only tools we have is chemoradiation surgery. Or this is autism, the only thing we have is special education system, and we try to adapt to your injury. There's nothing you can do about it. And well, if that's your way of kind of palliating the situation, you've stolen from the individual who's suffering under that situation any opportunity to reverse engineer what had happened.
I mean, people will say that doesn't make sense. I mean, why? What is the big cover-up? Why are they protecting? If it's the environment, fix the environment. There's something we can do. People will say, you're saying there's a conspiracy among doctors. I mean, I'm sure you hear this. You're saying doctors are the bad guy. Why aren't there more people like you saying there must be another way? There's got to be a better way. Why are we so afraid to discuss the environmental impact on disease? Is it just money?
No, I think it's just human defensiveness. It's our natural ego that's protecting us, right? And so we're trying to maintain our identity as a doctor. I went into this altruistically. I'm trying to help my patients. Frankly, I pour 80 hours a week into this job. I'm up against insurance companies. I'm always at battle with my hospital. It's kind of trying to strip money away from me. You feel as a doctor in today's environment as you're just like, being attacked and eroded from every side. And so you don't feel like you've got anything going but this identity of I care for my patients and I'm trying to do the right thing by them. And yet you keep turning to your toolbox, and the only things you have are things that keep adding on side effects or keep chasing further away from some root cause that was happening back in time. And so the defense mechanism is I went through 17 years of education. I've been a doctor for 13 years. I'm 30 years of experience. You can't mess with me. I know this stuff. I know biochemistry more than you do as a consumer who just Googled something and found some link. You have this natural recoil from that information because you're actually in the last states of collapse yourself. I believe the physician of today is in the last few tendrils of hanging on to some belief that it was all worth it, that their education was true, that their education was worth it, that they have a toolbox that can heal people. We're as desperate as the autistic kid in so many ways. And that may sound rude to the autistic community that's suffering under their condition. But with awareness comes a really big depression. With the awareness comes a really intense insecurity of I have all my faculties, I'm blessed, and here I'm sitting with an autistic child, or here I'm sitting with a cancer patient, and I can't help them get to the root cause of their situation. I know they are going to suffer under the treatments I have in my bag, and I have no idea how I would extract from that. And so that's where we get into this fight or flight, defensive, warlike attitude between patient population, consumer, and that physician contingent, science contingent. The interesting thing is this is maybe similar to Facebook or something like that, where you've got two people that are trying to communicate, and their communication is being moderated by a third party that's trying to manipulate both those people. Same thing is happening with the physician sitting at a patient's bedside. They are two human beings that are really, in the best of times, trying to really come to a solution for the individual. And yet they're both being manipulated by a third party or multiple third parties that are trying to make money from both of them. Make money from the physician, make money off the patient. The Western medicine philosophy, the Western medicine system that we have at large that's failing us is because we have put these third parties in control of the relationship between a physician and that. And so this is why so many physicians over the last 20 years have taken the really tough decision to leave the safety of their hospital system, leave their big multi-center practice, and become an isolated sole practitioner in, you name it, integrative medicine, functional medicine, alternative medicine. All these names have cropped up. They've made that jump because it's their only way they can find to get back into direct relationship with the patient.
Wow. All right. So there's a lot of work you're constantly investigating health. I know that this has led you into looking at autism. It's not where you started. You come out of cancer, but as you pointed out, all these diseases and the environmental effects. Where is your research taking you? I mean, let's talk about the gut biome for me.
Yeah. So this was an accidental journey for me. So I had started a nutrition center in 2010, and we were studying the impact of really intense, healthy food feeding to our chronically ill, diabetes, obesity, cancer, you name it. We were working on it. And we were finding that some people were really kind of seemingly reading the textbook from the 1960s and 70s, where if we start you on a plant-based, intense nutrition program, you're going to heal immediately. And my goodness, they were healing so quickly, I couldn't even wrap my head around it. But then there was a large contingent that was either not even responding to treatment. They just, we'd kale juice them, and we'd eliminate all processed foods, eliminate high fructose corn syrup, all this stuff that we knew was toxic. We'd eliminate it, and we'd start feeding them health food, and they would actually get more inflamed, not less. That was confusing. That was a moment of, wait a second, these bodies are not responding to a natural environment as they should. And that took us down the journey of what's in the food. Is there something fundamentally changed about kale or Brussels sprouts or all these healthy cruciferous vegetables that we knew could cure things? What's happened to those? And as we started to try to ask those questions, we suddenly realized we are lacking a lot of the building blocks of these plants that existed, that were present just 20, 30 years ago. And that got us into the study of soil. The soil, of course, is an incredible biodiversity ecosystem of bacteria, fungi, parasites, and the like. It's very similar to the human gut in its biodiversity. That's where we started to uncover some amazing similarities to my research in cancer. We found this group of molecules that are made by bacteria and fungi to allow them to communicate in these kind of really adverse environments that can happen in the soil or outside of your human body. And so in studying those molecules, we found that not only have we found something that was true to sort of my cancer research pathway, we had found something true to the importance of communication in an ecosystem. And nowhere is that more important, perhaps, than in the human ecosystem of our gut, our skin, all of the bacterial and fungal flora that lives all over and within us. It turns out that communication network has something to do with the very beginning of life. How does a seed come out and grow into a plant and know what fruit to make? How does a human know how to come out of a seed, create 70 trillion cells that work in concert to subspecialize into this complex organism and become a human that would embody a soul that has this deep purpose among us and has showed up at this moment to participate in the human experiment? That's an extraordinary thing. And what we have found again and again in the labs now is if you don't have the ecosystem to provide the communication network, you don't know who you are at that cellular level. You don't know you're human. You don't know you belong to a bigger system, and you become lonely and you start to degrade. It's very much like your cell phone getting too far away from the cell phone tower. There's a computer in your cell phone that works all the time, transmits, receives information all the time, but it actually cannot do its work if it's not connected to the greater network. And it's that wireless network of the cell phone towers that keep your computer uploading its data, updating its messaging system, all of this stuff, keeping it intact. Same thing with your cellular system. You lose that wireless communication network that's produced by the microbiome, you suddenly become an isolated human being that's now degrading. It can't get in touch with the larger community. It can't get in touch with the larger reality around it, and we start to accumulate injury, and that leads to chronic disease, inflammation, and the rest.
Wow. That's a really cool way to look at it. So tell me about glyphosate. How does glyphosate play into this?
So glyphosate is the most common chemical on the planet by many measures right now.
Really?
So you're looking at somewhere around 4.5 billion pounds of this chemical being dumped into the soil of the earth right now. And the disaster of glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup, the common weed killer that was made famous by Monsanto, That went off patent in 2007, and it's now made by every chemical company in the United States, and most of it's actually pouring out of China in generic glyphosate forms for all the weed killers and herbicides, pesticides on the planet. So at 4 billion pounds per year being dumped into our soil, that's a problem, obviously. That's a lot, or it could be a problem if it's toxic. If it was benign, we would have no problem. But the concern about it is not only does it have the ability to damage human systems, it functions as an antibiotic first. And so it's actually patented as an antibiotic, not a weed killer. So now you have an antibiotic that's being poured onto the surface of the planet at 4 billion pounds to destroy the ecosystem of the soils that would grow the foods that we would live on. But in addition to that, there's a issue with glyphosate in that it's water soluble. Our planet is 70% water. Your body is 70% water. Everything around us, the air we breathe, is water. Big mistake to add 4 billion pounds of a toxin that's water soluble to a system that is water. And so this is the reality we now live in, is that over the last 10 years, something like 80% of all the glyphosate ever used has been dumped in the last 10 years. And so we have this massive moment of glyphosate exposure to the population. And in that short time, we've contaminated the entire water ecosystem. So it's not just groundwater, it's not just our riverways that are running the farm waste off of, it's actually the air we breathe. So recent studies in the southern United States along the Mississippi River, 75% of the air is contaminated with glyphosate, 75% of the rainfall is contaminated with glyphosate. And so we think we're eating organic, we think we're living organic, we spend a whole bunch of money on organics, and yet if we're out in the environment, we're being exposed ubiquitously to this chemical glyphosate. So why is that a problem, or is it a problem? And certainly the chemical companies have sworn up and down it's not a problem. It can't hurt humans because it doesn't even hit an enzyme pathway that the bacteria and fungi have, but humans don't. The active kind of site of function is an enzyme pathway called the shikimate pathway. The shikimate pathway only exists in the plant kingdom, bacteria, fungi, and plants. No human has that pathway, and for that reason, we call the byproducts of the shikimate pathway the essentials, the essential amino acids. These are the ones we can't make. And in that journey of feeding health food to patients and seeing them get worse, not better, we found that we were missing some of those essential amino acids. We were missing some of the essential things made by the shikimate pathway because we're blocking it with glyphosate. Not just in the foods we're spraying directly, which is GMO corn, GMO soybeans, sugar beets. Tons of the legumes out there are being sprayed directly with glyphosate as a desiccant or drying agent. Wheat in the United States, in northern climates especially, being sprayed directly with glyphosate. And so we are putting this chemical directly on our food and damaging it. But then we're also indirectly, through the water system, contaminating the soil itself and all of plant life on Earth to block that shikimate pathway where we can't make the essential amino acids. What's an essential amino acid? There's only 26 amino acids. This is like the letters of the English alphabet. There's 8 vowels there. We have these 9 amino acids that are these essential pieces. Okay. Those essential amino acids we can't make. We need them from our food, and we are blocking at least 3 or 4 of those by the use of glyphosate. So what would happen if you suddenly subtracted out the vowels from the English alphabet? How many words would you misspell?
Right.
The vast majority. We are literally misspelling proteins as we build human bodies in an environment where we're lacking the constituents, the building blocks, the alphabet of human body we are missing. And so that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is once we've built these dysfunctional bodies and we're starting to experience disease as they collapse, we're missing the medicine in the food. The age-old adage from Hippocrates and the rest, let thy food be thy medicine. Well, the medicine in the food are largely the family called alkaloids. And the alkaloids that make the antidepressants, the anti-cancer compounds, the antihypertensives, the anti-diabetic compounds, it goes on and on and on. All those medicines that should exist in our food are produced through the shikimate pathway blocked by glyphosate. And so in one fell swoop, we've contaminated a planet to kill the microbiome, destroy our ability for that microbiome in the soil to provide the building blocks for human life, and subtract out the medicines that would have been provided by that food to treat the diseases we might adopt from some sort of environment like that. Perfect business plan in the end, that company is owned by the pharmaceutical industry. Pharmaca and now Bayer own Monsanto. And what an incredible business model. Let's remove the natural medicine from the food chain. Let's remove the natural capacity to build healthy human bodies. and let's provide a pharmaceutical environment to address the problems that would come down the pike.
What does someone do then with this understanding to get get those nutrients, to get that medicine back into their food supplies if possible?
It's so exciting. We are so able to reverse this thing right out of here, and it's just by communication again. Whole problem starts as we destroy the communication of the microbiome. We need to start communicating as human beings on a different level. We need to start communicating by eliminating the third party. That third party that's manipulating the consumer to the sources and resources it needs to be eliminated. In the case of our food, we need to eliminate the chemical companies from the farmer who's being manipulated to an extreme degree. Just like the physician being manipulated by the pharmaceutical company, our farmers are being manipulated with a toolbox of chemicals they're told are the only way they can grow food now. And they are just in the exact same predicament. And so in the same way, if we connect the physician directly back to the consumer and we can connect the farmer directly to the consumer, we solve the whole problem in one fell swoop. And so get to know a farmer or become a farmer yourself. I encourage both. Grow something in your backyard, grow something in your kitchen window, a basil plant, a tomato plant, grow something as a reminder to yourself that you are fundamentally connected to the food. You need to be fundamentally connected. So then find a CSA, find your local farmer's market, go meet a farmer, ask them how you can help them out, make the transition from chemical farming to non-chemical farming. If we tackle this as a community, imagine if we did something like Farm Corps. Let's start the Farm Corps, where our children at the end of high school are encouraged to spend a year or 2 years, not at the Peace Corps over in Africa, in the Farm Corps, rebuilding the fabric of the United States of America. What would that look like? And maybe we give them some incentives to say, hey, we'll pay for 2 years of school if you'll give us 2 years of farming. We'll give the farmers back the workforce that had been taken away from them and replaced by chemicals and manufacturing and all these other things that they're now told they have to use. Let's give them back humans. Let's give them back a workforce. And those children growing themselves on a farm for 2 years, what are they going to leave? Are they going to be duped into a 20-year career as a doctor who's told there's nothing natural that can help health? I don't think so. I think we would give them an education that would be unparalleled in human history if we gave them a steeped experience of watch how nature bursts life out of it and deliver that to a consumer and be a part of that consumer delivery to heal kids, heal families who are suffering from a lack of nutrients. We've got an opportunity to change everything.
I love that idea. Is there, so you develop products though, are you working on trying to replace things that are missing in this food system? How does that work?
Yeah, so we've decided that micromanaging the human body through supplements and all these products that are out on the market can also be a chasing after the wind. And so when we went to design a product, we wanted to make sure we were not micromanaging health or human biology at all. Instead, we just provided the communication network back to the system and let the system take care of itself. And so we've been extracting the carbon molecules made by the bacteria and fungi and then integrate the mineral amino acid complexes that keep that carbon matrix balanced in its oxidative and reductive state. It's this network or communication network that it was very similar to what you would picture a liquid circuit board, if you would. So a circuit board transmits energy and information all over the place to the correct locations. And so we created a liquid circuit board through a product called Restore. And that product has become a kind of an international phenomenon because it turns out that it gets at this antidote effect of glyphosate. Glyphosate that's eroding that communication network. We give it back the communication network, and the system actually repairs the direct injuries that glyphosate does to the human system at the gut lining, brain lining, faster than it injures. And so the recovery is faster than the injury can occur. And that's an exciting lesson in the design of life itself. Injury's inevitable, healing's faster. And so let's teach each other, let's explore healing rather than medicine. Let's explore healing and the biology of human potential rather than disease management.
Fantastic. Zach, what's the best way to follow the work you're doing if people out there want to get deeper into the work,
My website is zachbushmd.com. It's got all my education stuff on there. It's got links to the products we produce, things like that. So the zachbushmd.com will get you more. We've got hundreds of hours of podcasts and YouTube videos and everything else out there for you to dive in deep.
Well, I don't know about everybody else out there, but I feel a lot better knowing you're alive and doing the work that you're doing. It's really spectacular. It's great advice. I wish we could talk for hours. We probably will another time, but thank you for taking the time today, Zach.
Thanks for having me on.
All right,
Appreciate
cool.
it.